Welcome to this afternoon's PTIC. I'm Tim Rivet and I am the host of this call. We have apologies from Peter Stoner and Keith Sabin. I don't know whether you've had any more, Teresa.
I haven't. I did see the one you forwarded about Ian Barrett, but I haven't seen it.
Ian Barrett as well.
Ian Barrett. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If there's no more apologies, then let's get going. I suggest that we, when we first speak, we introduce ourselves rather than going through the attendee list. Hopefully you've had copies of the minutes of the last meeting and the agenda. If you got them from somebody else, let me know and I'll add you to the mailing list, or they're always on the PTIC website anyway. But last time we met just before Christmas on the 5th of December, there were a few actions, there were a few opportunities as well. Business case for ABOD Triumph was after some use cases and business case ideas for it. Then Dr. J, I think she's probably been and gone wanting contacts for rail station data. They will update us on that in a bit, I'm sure. An important action for anybody that's using PlusBus location data. Please don't use Dr. J's stroke the Naptan. Please use Mike's version. Again, that might be good to get an update from either of you when you come for your slots. Mike and Ian, we're going to follow up about real-time feeds for Lancashire. Have Lancashire reappeared in next buses, Mike?
Not yet, Tim, but we have had the conversation. We have got a feed now for all of Wales that TFW provided, and we've got a northeast one coming on back online shortly. But Lancashire, we've still got that to do, so keep it on the list.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's good progress and clearing up the gaps. Christmas data. Yeah, let's pick up later and the lessons from that. I should have put it on the agenda. Length of fields in Naptan. We'll pick that up under Naptan, and then introduction to the EU standards, people for Dr. J. I am remiss at not having done that. I apologise. So if you hold me to account, Teresa, and make sure it stays on.
Right. Okay, Tim. Yeah, no problem.
Don't let me forget it. And then Nick, Carey and Triumph were going to have a chat about block numbers. Do we need to keep that on?
Oh, go on. Sorry, Triumph.
No, you go ahead, please. I'm listening.
Well, Nick might want to add as well. Well, we have chatted with Ben and a few others in DFT. We haven't spoken to you about it specifically, Triumph, but very happy to follow up with that. You may have been copied in on the email chain. I can't remember. Nick might want to add some more But yeah, we're a bit like you, Tim. We will keep it there, but it's
keen to keep it there. And anytime you like, Triumph, and we're happy to tell you where it's at. We wondered whether, I mean, Ben suggested that we set up a working group to pursue this, and then we said, "Hi Ben, any news?" I wrote to him a couple of weeks ago, but haven't heard any more. And I don't know whether that's because of the retendering process. It may be that everything goes quiet during that. So,
perhaps it is something that we should pick up here in a slightly wider context, to understand some of the issues in a more general
very good
way.
idea. Yeah.
And then talk
Goodness.
to Bods about that.
Yeah, we could even, Tim, add it as an issue on the issues log. I did think about that as I was watching the video.
Yes, then I won't have to do, and there are no issues, and I don't believe it. So yeah, there we go. Let's add it to the issue log. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
It will no longer sit as a lonely agenda item. Okay, right. So that's the minutes of the last meeting. We then move on to the bus open data service updates. So we've got a whole range of things that we want to cover here, from the current service through to the procurement to disruptions and fares and ABODs somewhere in between. So I think we're probably best off starting with Triumph to where are we now and what's happening.
Thank you very much, team. I didn't present, I didn't put together a very, well, not much has happened since the last time we spoke in December, but I would give a quick update as to where we are, if that's okay. Just give me a minute. Let me get my slide decks together. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
So I just give an update on the procurement quickly. For those who might not be aware as to the journey so far, we've got it to a point where we need to retender bots and give the market an opportunity, or give suppliers within the market an opportunity to bid for that piece of work. So this commenced last year when we issued an RFI. I think we issued an RFI around March last year, if I remember correctly. We had 29 responses to the RFI, of which all respondents to that RFI were attended to an open day, a supplier day in May in Birmingham. Of the 29 that responded, 28 were represented at that supplier day, after which we released a selection questionnaire in June. Due to a few complications, we had to release that questionnaire, that selection questionnaire, again in October 2024, of which we received 29 responses. We evaluated those responses, and 6 suppliers were selected to go through to the ITT stage. We're now at the point where we are ready to release that ITT, and we hope that ITT is released very soon, very, very soon. So that's where we are on procurement. Since we spoke in December, we have gone live with a DFT NCSD. So the DFT is now transitioning away from and the NCSD service being provided standalone by a third-party supplier. We have developed systems that can automatically take transaction service as automatically as possible. There is still some human intervention required, but we can take timetables from coach suppliers and make that available on boards. This was launched at the back end of last year, but due to feedback from users in terms of trying to understand the differences between the two data sets, adjust to it, so adjust their systems and data pipelines to consuming this new data set, we have left the NCSD running. But it's our intention that at the end of this month, we potentially would be ceasing to provide what was the incumbent NCSD service, and going forward, all coach data would be consumed directly via bots. We continue to work with, well, it's our intention to work with the big 5 operators to aggregate cancellations data to provide real-time updates on bots. Unlike, the data the primary data on bots, this is not mandated by legislation. So we seek the cooperation of these operators to provide this data to us. We've received very positive feedback from a few, and in fact, a few operators have committed to provide that data to us. But we still continue to work with the other operators to ensure that we get, as much as we can, sort of a complete Big 5 picture for cancellations data set before we make these data sets live. GTFS, the program is transitioning away from providing GTFS and GTFS RTs through third-party suppliers. We have developed the DFT capability to provide GTFS and GTFS RT data. That nothing changes from a consumer perspective. They will continue to be able to consume GTFS data from bots, but we believe that bringing all of this under DFT control is the best course of action, and that's something that we have done. We would be launching our GTFS and GTFS RT services in the coming weeks, and that will take things away from sort of the current position where a third-party supplier is providing that on behalf of the DFT. In the last few months, probably last few years actually, we have been looking at adopting a trans exchange tool, particularly the Powish tool, as developed by Kodagatun on behalf of Powish CC. Due to commercial legal complications, in the short term, we would not be adopting that tool. It is the position of the department to complete the procurement for boards. After that's done, we will then sit down and appraise the options available to us insofar as the provision of a trans exchange tool is concerned. So that's the position on that. And finally, ABODs, and I would like to, once this is done, hand over to Jonathan Ramsbottom, who has been working with me on the delivery of ABODs to speak in depth on the new ABODs and some of the future developments that we are making on ABODs, for example, of a data quality dashboard and a few other things. But as you may know, we've had ABODs for 4 years, and that had partly been provided through a third-party supplier, the back end being provided through a third-party supplier on a software as a service basis, based on departmental requirements and feedback from users. We decided to rebuild ABODs and bring it completely into DFT ownership, make it completely open source, open code, and it sits completely within DFT infrastructure. So We have developed a DFT-owned warehouse and developed a matching algorithm, set of logic and algorithms based on user feedback and user research. The aim of improving timetables, scheduling, and performance analysis. This new ABOS was launched in February, and we are currently at the point of sort of engaging with users in sort of question and answer sessions to, understand, any issues, any pain points, any opportunities for improvements that they have identified since we launched ABOS in February. At this point, I will stop and ask for any questions before handing over to Jonathan Ramsbottom to talk more in-depthly about ABOS.
Dan.
Hi, yes, Dan Saunders from Basemap. So it's interesting, last point, and maybe Jonathan will cover this in a second, but you said the ABOS is open source and open code. Does that mean that us as a private organisation can pull that code and develop upon it and utilise that ourselves using the real-time kind of bus feeds to build our own version of ABOS? Is that the intention of making that open?
So yeah, intention, there is a GDS requirement and a sort of government data strategy commitment to be open by default. So all codes for bots and ABOS would be made open in an open sort of repository for anybody to utilize that code for whatever it is they want to utilize that code for, so long as it meets the requirement of the there is government licenses for the utilization of government. So as long as you're being responsible with the code, you can utilize that code for whatever reason you want to utilize that code for. So if you've got an intention or an ambition to build something that's similar to ABOS, please feel free to utilize that code for that purpose.
Thanks, because I understand that ABOS obviously still is only open for local authorities to utilise, and so us as a private sector are unable to access ABOS. So I guess that would be an alternative for us to do our own hosted version of that if we wanted to, or is the intention going to be to open up ABOS? Now you've got the third-party restrictions out the way that anyone could access it.
So, that is something that we are considering within the department. Not considering open, we are appraising whether or not ABOS should be open. But I think before we make a decision on ABOS being open, there is some consultation that needs to be done with stakeholders before we get to a point where ABOS can be open to users that are not bus operators or local authorities at the moment. But watch this space. We would continue to update this group and this forum as to how we make progress with ABOS.
Thanks, Mark.
I've just, Dan, and anybody interested, I've just put a link to the DFT BODS GitHub, where the currently released code set for BODS is, in case anybody wants to access that. Dan, you suggested that was one of a couple of questions, or did I get that wrong?
No, that was it. That's it for me for the moment.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions? Okay, before we move on to ABOD, just to pick up on the cancellation stuff, whilst, as Triumph says, the cancellation feeds are non-mandatory, there's a bit of work going on to document a recommended profile for Sirius X for those cancellations, and so that will be available in the next few weeks, hopefully, so that anybody that's wanting to provide data has got a baseline to work off to try and get some commonality and make life easier for everybody.
Are you able to share a copy of that with us, Tim? Just so, because I know we're doing some prep for ABODs potentially bringing in cancellations.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, that will be open, but I can let you have what we've got now from the suppliers and current thinking. I'll share that with you early next week.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no more. It's a perfect segue to Jonathan. Please take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so I don't know if I've met everyone on this call. So as a quick intro, Jonathan. So I've been working quite heavily on the design of the new ABOD system. So I'll jump straight into the logic. So we've obviously redeveloped all of the back end, all of the database, all of the data underlying the front end. And this is the logic that we've used. So we've got the alignment of our timetable and live location data is obviously important. So we use our national operator code, service or line name, and the journey code, and they need to align between the timetable data and the live location data. Once we've got a match between those two, we go into this departure detection logic. So we've got an initialization within 70-meter zone of a radius. So we first wait until there's an AVL location within 70 meters of a stop. Then we wait until we've seen 2 successive GPS positions recorded outside of the stationary zone, which is to ensure that when we've got 2 positions moving away from the stop, we know, yes, that bus has definitely departed. If the bus reports back in the stationary zone, after moving out, reset their detection logic. So that's to capture issues or data quality problems where potentially you have a stationary bus, but the GPS locations are jumping around. If the GPS locations come back in, it will reset, and then we can depart again. We've got the 2 slightly different behaviors. So we've got the start of a journey. So that for the first stop, we allow 5 minutes for that reset condition. That's to allow for, like I said, any jumping GPS, or if the bus is coming into the station from the previous journey, it prevents it from, it allows it to rematch once we've actually got a departure. And then we've got mid-journey stops. So do not rematch if the stop has already been matched in the correct sequence. So we're making sure once we've got a sequence of stops, are they in a valid order? So are they going in increasing order effectively? Does it go 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to 5, 4, 3? And that's to stop issues on, say, a returning bus route. So if a bus goes up a road and back down the same road, allowing it to match in the correct sequence of stops. Then finally, once we're happy that all that has been met, we record that departure time. So it's accepted all those conditions, or it's passed all those conditions. We then record the last GPS location in the 70-meter radius as that departure time. Then we've got an additional estimated matching. So I think it's easier to demo this on a vehicle journey, but I'll quickly discuss it. When we have 2 successive GPS positions intersecting the 70-meter radius of a stop, we estimate the departure. So this is for where you've got 3G outage. So obviously some services operate in places where there's poor 3G coverage, so you'll receive pings less frequently. And this is to allow for, if we don't receive a GPS location in that 70-meter zone, but we can see there's 2 around that stop, and it crosses, and the intersection between those 2 pings crosses a stop, then we estimate that departure time. As I say, I'll give an example of an actual vehicle journey where that's occurring on the website. And then finally, we've got the arrival detection logic. So at the end of a journey, so for the final stop on the journey, the initialization, or that first step is, do we have a position detected within the zone? And then we record that first position recorded in the zone. So essentially we're detecting the arrival time in the final stop, because obviously the bus doesn't depart. And then because of that, the last stop can only be marked as on time or late. So we won't mark the final stop as early, as from a passenger's perspective. The passenger would be happy arriving to that last stop early, as they're not picking up any passengers. I will carry on. So in terms of the overall release, so just to give a quick update, we've been doing lots of Q&A sessions, lots of show and tell sessions last week. We had a Q&A session, so any operators or LTA contacts, please feel free to point them in our direction. Happy to set them up if they haven't been already. They should have already been contacted and be on the system. But we've had follow-up sessions this week. We've got upcoming work, which Amina will dive more into in terms of the compliance dashboard. But to give a brief, I'll quickly go over the stop analysis. So package of work that's upcoming is we will have a area on a map, and you'll be able to find the hotspots on the map in terms of the stops performance. So it will show all of the stops in a given area, and they'll be color-coded red, orange, or green, dependent on their on-time performance. So it'll be useful for local transport authorities to see where there's issues over a given road or a given area. I'll leave the compliance and monitoring dashboard for Amina to give a live demo. So we've got our hypercare phase at the moment. So taking in any feedback, working on any fixes, immediate fixes, and a feedback form, which will be closing on the 12th of March. So that's the stages that we're at effectively with our development. But in terms of the actual site, I appreciate a lot of everyone on this call is probably quite familiar with ABOD, so I won't go through step by step. I'll just give a quick summary of each page and what potential changes or the iterations that we've made, but happy to go into more detail. If anyone wants to put their hand up or chip in, I'm definitely keen to go into more detail. But we've got the dashboard, still very similar design, your summary of your on-time performance, summary of your feed monitoring, still very similar behavior and front end on this page. In terms of the feed monitoring, we've got slightly different behavior in terms of what we class as an inactive feed. We had feedback that the inactive feeds were being reported when there wasn't actually timetable data active for that period. What I mean by that is at the moment, the current logic is we have a task that runs on an hourly basis, and then it will check for the previous hour, was timetable data expected? If there was timetable data expected, we then check, well, can we see live location data for that timetable data? And then we would only class a feed as inactive if we can't see live data, but we were expecting a live data based on the timetable data. Happy to go into more detail on that because I appreciate that's some complex logic. Not too much else has changed around the feed monitoring. Still just reporting on active feeds, and you can look into your current vehicles based on your AVL data compared to your expected vehicles in terms of timetable data. David, I see you put your hand up.
Yes, sorry. I was just going to ask about the timetable, the expected one on that the previous slide. There is a go northwest one there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not getting any data because they don't run anymore. Why are you saying it's in the list?
So this will be based off the national operator codes assigned to that organization. So it will be a case of go updating their national operator codes on BODs and removing this national operator code, and then they won't see it on this feed monitoring page. So that's why it's been classed as active, because we haven't been expecting any timetable data. So we haven't been missing AVL data, so we class it as active, but it'll just be a case of go ahead updating this on their BODs account.
Right, okay, no, that's understood, so long as we're not complicating matters by not sending you no data or something like that. Yeah, okay, understood, thank you.
Well, thank you. And then in terms of on-time performance, so very similar layout. Obviously, the matching logic has changed, so you'll see differences in percentages of your on-time, early, late. We've broken down this incomplete. We've realised that a lot of operators or local transport authorities didn't. It was quite difficult to understand where this incomplete statistic was coming from. So we've given a bit more clarity on that and broken it down into these different reasons. So we've got the first one is stops with unspecified matching issues. So that's just because we've only pushed that change recently. So it hasn't analysed those stops. They were probably over a week ago, and we pushed this change 5 days ago. But we've got 45,000 stops with missing service, 37,000 stops with missing journey code as the top two. So as I mentioned earlier, we're relying on the national operator code, service and journey code to match between the timetable data and the live location data. In these cases, we've got 45,000 where we haven't matched the service in that process, and another 37,000 where the journey code hasn't aligned. So it'll be a case of updating the live location or timetable data to make those align in terms of those services and journey codes. And the final two are when we have received that match, could we see a stop in the zone or not? So 83,000 we could, we couldn't, 83,000 we couldn't see a stop, a GPS location in 70 meters radius of a stop, and 27,000 we could. The only thing to highlight in terms of actual changes to the front end is this estimated and evidence-based toggle, which is to do with the logic I was discussing earlier, where we have that blue section with estimated, and that nicely leads me into vehicle journeys. So again, for anyone who hasn't seen this page, it's your breakdown journey by journey, and we can see the actual live pings of a bus and the stops. So for example, Plantation Road was expected there, and the bus was over here at 11:01, travelled down to here at 11:01:53. And what I wanted to highlight here, though, is the the estimated toggle. So at the moment, this stop hasn't been matched, and that's because we haven't received the location in the 70-meter radius of this stop. However, if we choose the estimated toggle, it fills in that data, and you can see it takes that incomplete stat to 0% from 14%. So we wanted to make sure that we separated that evidence-based and estimated-based, so that we were confident with the evidence-based that is a departure. That's when we saw that bus leave. But for any operators that have 3G outage or some missing and poor data quality, they can use this estimated to get a good feel for their services. And then finally, we've got corridors, all very similar in terms of the layout. Underlying data again has changed, but you can track the performance or average speed, average journey time across a specific road or a specific set of stops. The only difference being this estimated and evidence-based toggle, which is exactly the same behavior as the vehicle journeys. It will try and fill in those gaps in terms of the missing transits. So we can see this one, it stays at 395 missing transits. So it suggests that this data quality is good when we do receive it. It's every 30 seconds, but you'll see with some operators that missing transits reduces quite significantly. I'll try and give a quick. That's 208 missing transits, goes down to 131 between these two stops. So really helps fill in those gaps for some of the local transport authorities, and give a more complete data set. So that's a quick rush through of ABODs. Appreciate I've gone through that super quickly. If anyone has any questions, I'll pause there before I hand to Amina just to quickly run through the dashboard.
Any questions?
Yes.
Mark.
You may have covered this, so apologies if you did, but that 70-meter radius from the stop, would you ever configure that so if a local authority came back or the operator came back and said that needs to be changed because it's an interchange or there's some local situation where that creates an issue, would you configure it, and what would be the change process for doing that?
So at the moment, there isn't the ability to do that. We've tried to make it a same size zone so that across the board, everyone is judged at the same level with the same zone sizes. The zone size was created in consultation with a lot of operators and local transport authorities. So we had weeks, or probably over weeks of sessions with local transport authorities and operators to define that size of zone. The reason for it being slightly larger is to account for things like the GPS jumping, poor data quality, and NatTan locations being in slightly different areas. So it accounts for that. But we've also made sure that in terms of on-time performances, when comparing to the ticketer portal or any of the operators' own private systems, that the on-time performances are still staying accurate. So yeah, we've been working quite closely to try and make sure that that zone size is correct, but definitely interested in feedback. If you do see some differences in your statistics, please do highlight them to us.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Mike next.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Just a quick question on the, you mentioned there about operators' own systems. How is this now comparing to their own performance systems? Are the two tallying up, or is there any disparity between operators' own?
From what we've seen, we're about 1 to 2% off of operators' own systems. So positive so far, but again, the more data we can get, if you have your own systems that you can compare against and send that through to us, that'd be great.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yes, just out of interest. Brilliant. Thanks, Jonathan.
Well, thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see. I've got a quick question around, again, following up on Mark said about the 70 meters type of stuff. We did some stuff like this about 12 or 13 years ago in Essex, where we put some GPS loggers on some buses to find out if they're working, working on time. And we found that actually you had to look at not each stop individually, you had to look at the stops and the sequences where it stops. We found some rivers, for example, where a bus would do a U effectively. And so you'd ping it twice as it's on one side of the river, but it'd be a false positive because actually it's gone to the stop on the other side of the river. So there's only 10 meters between them or something like that. And because you've got a physical barrier in between it, it was being pinged earlier on. So we actually had to look at the whole route afterwards in post-processing to work out the sequencing of where it had gone before that and where it had gone afterwards. Have you come across that at all in your testing or taken account of that?
Yeah, definitely. So with these sessions, we've asked operators and everyone for all of these kind of edge cases. And I know I went over the logic in a high level, but we do have specific edge cases that we do try and capture in that logic as well. So the case that you're talking about specifically. But again, please do send us over your vehicle journeys or any journeys that you do have kind of those challenges with. We'd be really interested to see how our logic does handle those situations.
The neighbours were kept at arm's length as we're private sector, so we don't get to have any comments or feedback on it. So yes.
I see. Well, hopefully that might change in the near future. But yeah, if you could share any services or that we could probably have a look at or any challenging ones, that would be good for us to have a look into. Thank you.
Yeah, Eva.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments over here. Is that it might be it is challenging to develop one algorithm on the national scale. So therefore, the team is looking into all edge cases, and it's the work in progress. We captured whatever we have been reported to from people who we consulted in designing the algorithm, then later on during the UAT stage. Still, we are getting some extra use cases, and this is work in progress. And hopefully we will minimize any discrepancies with time close to zero. And another thing which I'd like to highlight, the 70-meter zone, which we so often are being asked about. Why this is 70? Is it too big? Is it too small? Should it be smaller? Should it be rounded? Should it be? It's part of the algorithm. It's really, we started with smaller. I think initially we started with 30 or 50. But until the technology and the word and messages are super perfect, we have to acknowledge that the GPS signals are jumping up and down within the zone. And we really, the main reason for 70-meter zone is really to capture the signal. But it's only a part of the message. And of course, discrepancies which Jonathan mentioned, a bit of off-site napton location, etc., just to ensure that everything is done really well. But also it's extremely crucial that once the bus is leaving the zone, there are extra two pings which we need to capture, which direction is going, and variety of different nitty-gritty of the algorithm, which we'll publish the description and the more details on how the algorithm has been designed and why is it working, and people seem to be really happy in comparison to their own private commercially purchased portals or local authorities engagement with a variety of different providers. But it's work in progress. So absolutely, we want to hear. We want to get any feedback from you, whether this is in the local area or whether this is any idea to improve that and streamline it for the future. So thank you, anyone. I mean, some of you participated in this, but if you hear this from the industry that it needs some improvement and some suggestions, we are here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. Any other questions on ABOD? No. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that useful run through of where you are at the moment with ABOD. Is there any update on disruptions and fares?
It's Amina who will be also showing the dashboard, which will.
Yes, okay, yeah. Sorry, Amina.
It will appear in ABOD.
Forgive me.
Oh, good. I'll share my screen. But hi everyone, it's nice to meet you all. I'll just give a brief introduction to myself. So my name is Amina. I work for the BODS project. Initially started out working with operators, supporting them in publishing their data on BODS, but just now working on developing some of the new features on BODS and ABODS, which is what I'll be going through now. So as Jonathan sort of introduced in his segment, we're looking to introduce a new page to ABODS that is named Data Monitoring. So this page will display a dashboard which is focused on providing a single view on the completeness and data quality of the data published on BODS for registered bus services. So this will be to support operators, local authorities and the regulation authorities with understanding the health of their BODS data and generate their own insights from this as well. So at the moment on BODS, we have various CSV reports available that provide information to operators and publishers on the completeness and quality of their BODS data. But it can be quite difficult for a user to easily understand at a glance what the health of their BODS data is looking like and also generate their own insights from this. So this dashboard is looking to resolve that. There will be further developments to the dashboard based on user requirements and feedback that comes through. But at the moment, it just focused on providing insights on BODS completeness and data quality. So there's 3 different views of this dashboard. One for regulation authorities who will be able to see data for all operators with registered bus services. There's a view for local authorities who will be able to see information for registered bus services within their area. And then a separate view for operators who will be able to see information for registered bus services for their particular organisation. So on the screen at the moment, what you can see is the local authority dashboard. So if a local authority was to log on and view this page, this is the view they will be able to see. Everything you see at the moment is dummy data for Derbyshire County Council, just for demo purposes. But I'll just go through what the dashboard is and then, leave some time at the end for any questions. So at the top, we've got high-level KPIs. It includes the number of registered bus services, and then the percentage of those services that have published timetables, location, and fares data to BODS. So pretty much tells us the completeness of data published on BODS. And then just below that, we've got the proportion of registered bus services that require attention. So service requiring attention, for those who aren't aware, it's a terminology used on BODS for registered bus services that have an issue in their BODS data and therefore requires action by the publisher to resolve. This could either be because there's no data published for that bus service, or they have published data, but it's out of date. So this sort of visual gives you a percentage of those services which require attention. The table on the right gives you the list of top operators with services that require attention. So from a local authority perspective, they'll be able to know who are the top operators within their area which have poor data quality on BODS or missing data on BODS. They'll be able to filter for top 10 operators, top 2 operators using this box filter at the top. And then just below this, we've got a breakdown of service requiring attention. So you've got one for timetables, one for location data, and one for fares. So if you look at the breakdown of services with timetables requiring attention, it will give the user an overview of how that's improved over time or reduced over time. So we've got in green the number of bus services that have published timetable data that is up to date, and the proportion which have expired for whatever reason. So there's a few timeliness statuses that we use on boards. Things like the service hasn't been updated within a year, or they published timetable data but it's not providing a 42-day look ahead, or a change was made with their OTC registration but the change was not then published onto boards. So this sort of gives a breakdown of that. And then again, you can see the top 5 operators which have timetables requiring attention. If I was to select any of these operators, for example, Harper's Coaches, you'll be able to see the breakdown for their services over time. So they've got 100% of services that they published that hasn't been updated within a year. Again, this is all dummy data. I'm sure that's not the case in actual fact. And if you scroll further down, you'll be able to see information on the data quality for timetable data. So what proportion of timetable data published on boards for bus services have critical data quality issues? And in terms of the critical data quality issues, which are the ones which is most prevalent? So we can see here, the last stop is not a timing point, is the most prevalent data quality issue for published timetable data on boards. And if I scroll further down, you'll be able to see a breakdown of AVL and fares requiring attention. So in terms of AVL requiring attention, what we're showing here is the proportion of registered bus services that have published timetable data to boards and their location data to boards, but they do not match. And of course, if they do not match, it will cause issues with that data then appearing in downstream journey planning apps and A boards as well. And again, you will see the top 5 operators which have AVL issues in their data. And then with fares, we've got a breakdown of fares data published to boards and the proportion of those which are not NetEx compliant. And the proportion of fares data published to boards, which is, again, out of date because it's either 1 year old or is not providing a 42-day look ahead. And if you click on see details for any of these, so if I go over here, click see details, it will take you to this page, which gives you insight of each of the registrations and a bit more detail on the bus services which require attention and for what reason. You've got a few filters at the top, which you can sort of use to pick a specific operator or a local transport authority and see detailed information for that specific operator or local transport authority or registration. And then we've also got a help page at the end over here. So this is just to help users understand what the underlying data source is being used to drive the data on this dashboard, and a bit more information about how each of the metrics being displayed on the dashboard is calculated, and for publishers some support on how to sort of improve their data. So links to some of the bots YouTube videos that we have explaining the data quality statuses and what needs to be done to correct those. So yeah, that's a quick whistle-stop tour of the dashboard. If anyone is interested in testing the dashboard out, it is available on the pre-production site and we're keen to get feedback. Please do let us know. But yeah, happy to answer any questions anyone might have on this. Dan?
Thank you, Amina. Dan.
Hi, yeah, really interesting. I think that's a really much needed thing that boards could have to really improve everything. So that's a fantastic piece of work. Do we think, will this be open for everyone or will it be behind password protection, will be open for Joe public to look at? Do you know?
It will be for ABODS users, and ABODS users at the moment, yeah, it's restricted to operators and local authorities.
Okay, and then the second part is obviously on this dashboard at the very, very first thing, a percentage of services that have been published is 79.5. I know you're saying that is dummy data. Do you know what the real number is of that?
I can probably find that out.
Is
Get back to you separately.
I can say it's 86. close to 90. It is done changing on a monthly basis, depending how good operators are with, but we are checking it on a monthly basis, basically. I mean, we can have a view on a daily basis, but it's just below 90% for both timetables and AVL. AVL slightly lower towards 86, and FARS around 80.
Okay, that's great. And yes, thank Dr. J for that. And second of all, what's being done to get up to 100%? I guess that's not a KPMG question, more of a DFT question, but what's being done to raise that number?
We continue to engage with bus operators, and internally we continue to speak with sort of all internal stakeholders, including arm's length bodies, as to how we can constantly utilize DFT resources to either support operators in getting that the number up, but also compel operators in other ways to ensure that they get those numbers up. So once the procurement is done, the primary focus would be, sort of data quality and engagement with the industry to ensure that data quality and completeness is where it needs to be. Does that answer your question, Dan?
I guess so. I guess my kind of concern is we've been kind of slowly increasing this number over time, but we've never really actually hit 100% or anywhere near that in the how many years that PODS has been around at the moment. So yeah, it'd be good to know what is done.
I mean, in all fairness, data quality and completeness is a dynamic thing. Just when you think you've sorted it out, things change as to whether or not 100% consistently is a realistic thing. It's a conversation we need to have as an industry. But I think we are committed to ensuring that at every point in time, we're as close to sort of data completeness, quality and timeliness as can be. But I don't know if things can consistently be at 100%, and whether or not that's realistic considering the constraints that the industry is dealing with.
Yeah, I guess there's a wider question is there how if you set the goal to be 100%, actually it's a different question. How do we get to that 100%? We rely on operators doing it, or do we rely on humans to start creating that data where we know it's missing? There's not the reliance to do it or something like that. But again, that's my kind of thought on the processes. The goal should be 100% because if I want to get a bus, I want to make sure that bus timetable is open and that's published and I can utilize it. So if you miss that bus, then you're kind of failing a passenger as part of it. So yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I do think we should strive to get all the data onto PODS as part of it. I think that's probably a good expectation to have.
And I agree, Dan, with that, and we are on this journey. And as Trav mentioned, we were in mid-90s a few months ago, and then it dropped again, etc. And there are various factors. It's not only operators; it's also technology suppliers who are supporting them, who need to collaborate. Various factors over here is the reference data set, how accurate it is, etc., and how to measure this. So I think, I'm a great believer that the ABOTS will visually engage the industry much more than the spreadsheet and CSV files which they had to date, and then they would be able to really see what's going on, and they would be striving to enhance the data quality, because this would be really at the front of them quite easily, and in red and green. So we have great hopes that this dashboard, as well as improved on-time performance, the data which is completely on the DFT network and the full infrastructure, etc. 90% of work is done. It's just now improvement and working together in a positive manner to get this done properly for the benefits of everyone. We've been on the interchange. We've been yesterday on ticketing global, and everybody really wants to have as accurate data. And we were constantly being approached by small organization, upcoming organizations who benefited from bots to date, and they are keeping asking, you know, will it be better? What can we do? Can we do it this way? What do you think? Etc. So, you know, I think that bots stimulated economy in the bus industry extremely. And, you know, of course, opinions might be. We have evidence, but, you know, whether this evidence is translated into a strong opinion or, you know, sort of whatever it is, I think it's a fantastic initiative to generally, you know, to have an open data and work towards best quality and showing it in such an open way. Sorry, I took a bit longer, so, but I wanted just to comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Eva. Mike.
Yeah, I think it's just following on from Dan's point in terms of enforcement. This going forward, this is a great piece of work. I mean, a really good kind of clean view. You mentioned there about AirBods users and see it, and that I think you said was local authorities. Is the long-term view that local authorities will use this to cajole their operators in their areas to make sure, like Dan was saying, we get to 100% and we address those issues that need addressing? Is that where the responsibility is going to be going forward? Because I think, like I said, the first challenge is let's get up to 100%. When we get there, it's managing that ongoing as well. And who's going to do that, I suppose? Is it the local authorities?
I think the landscape is changing. The landscape has definitely changed since we started bots and franchising and increased local authority responsibility. And in some cases, funding has changed the landscape. So there is an opportunity there for local authorities to take more responsibility to ensure that you know, data on boards is as quality as can be. Whether or not, you know, that's official departmental sort of policy, sort of direction of travel is not something I can comment on. That there is, you know, it's not something that there is no departmental policy sort of putting the onus and the responsibility for compliance on local authority at the moment. That being said, you know, any commitment or any actions from local authorities to casual, to use your words, bus operators to, you know, to up the quality of their data on boards and support the endeavor is welcome. But we think that, you know, if things continue to progress in the manner in which they are at the moment, local authorities will be having more involvement in the data and the quality of the data, and providing a tool that can help them understand, you know, data quality in their local areas, I think will be beneficial to them and beneficial to us.
Yes, but just on that one, try that, because I suppose it comes back to the kind of long-term operating model that we always we never kind of fully understood that. Like I said, I think this is great to highlight where there's an issue, but it's then someone to do something about it. And I suppose the only concern, and this is more of a personal thing rather than a kind of Traveline view, is that, you know, some local authorities will be really good and go out and encourage their operators to get the data up to 100% and accurate. Then you're going to have other areas where they maybe don't. So it feels like we've got a great tool here to identify the completeness and quality of data, but it's somebody is supposed to use it and then go and act upon that to correct the data.
Yeah, like we said, you know, we continue to work with interdepartmental stakeholders to ensure that, you know, we use our engagement with the industry, both, you know, operators and local authorities, to up the quality of data to boards. Boards is not the only program that engages with local authorities. They're sort of basic, BSOG, and many other programs, and it's just understanding how, you know, we can work with local authorities using these various engagements to support the quality of data on boards. There is still some work to be done on that front, but like I said, we will continue to engage and hopefully we find the right solutions to help local authority help support local authorities, support us in terms of, you know, upping the quality of data on boards.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any more? If not, thank you, Amina. Thank you, Jonathan. have we got anything on disruptions or fares this time? Is there anything to update us on?
I mean, in terms of disruptions, there are no changes on the situation with the disruptions tool that DFT have since the last update. I think Triumph's already touched on cancellations, and it was touched on the last meeting as well.
Yeah.
That we are building a service we built a service that aggregates Series X cancellations direct from operator back offices, mainly tickets machine suppliers. But that's yet to be released, and probably won't be released in the near future while we kind of work through some issues in terms of the data structure and also how the operators deal with costs and things like that. But that is in the pipeline, and there is a kind of infrastructure already there. So hopefully the next PTIC meeting we will be talking about a planned release of the cancellation Series X API. But for now, the only Series X available via bods is the disruptions data created by the local authorities on the tool. I do have a short update on fares, which I do have a deck for, because I guess there are a couple of things that need touching on, I think. I guess the big thing is complex fares. So before Christmas, DFT issued an email stating that the 31st of March this year was the deadline for operators to provide complex fares. Now, a lot of complex fares, a lot of things that would be considered complex fares under legislation are actually already available on bods, by which I'm thinking about carnets, I'm thinking about group tickets, and also like regular products that are available via different channels with different pricing structures. So a lot of the complex fares were actually already published as part of simple fares, because it was ultimately impossible to detangle both of those sort of concepts. So really, when we talk about complex fares now, there's really two major outstanding blocks. The big one being anything that's a post-pay product. So really, we're talking about tap and cap, things that qualify for caps. And then we're talking about through tickets as well, which are a kind of edge case, which causes no end of problems. So at this point, there is a deadline of the 31st of March. We have updated the bods, or we are in the process of updating the bods fares validation routine to add a few certain conditional checks for things like caps, but it's a pretty light touch validation. There's probably only 3 or 4 additional rules. So bods, once that's released, we'll be able to handle complex fares as they're defined. So yeah, well, bods itself is ready, but I mean, I guess as you can see there on the deck, no ETM supplier is currently technically capable of producing this data, and it seems like probably quite a way off that actually being the case. So it seems likely that this deadline won't be met. I think there is a recognition of that fact. And just as an aside, the CFDS can produce data for cap products should any operator want to go down that route. Obviously, we're aware that would be quite a time-consuming process, but the CFDS can support that if the operators are concerned about their compliance. I do have a separate slide about CFDS, but I mean, since complex fares is quite a meaty issue, I think I'll probably just stop and see if anybody's got a question or a challenge or a concern about complex fares. I mean, I think it's one of those things that's so big and difficult that people don't really want to think about it. But
I mean, from a standards perspective and a data format perspective, that's done and dusted. It's then, as is often the case, how do you then create and maintain it?
So I mean, I think that in terms of, well, actually, Matt, go on. I'll let you go first.
I don't want to muddy the water too much, but one of our current thinkings for franchising is personal travel zones. So a customer will define what their centroid is, and then so rather than having fixed fare zones, you would define your own fare zone based on your own local interpretation of fare boundaries. It's some way off, but I'll put that on the radar as maybe something we can have a talk about, because that might be another edge case that you might like.
I think that's blown straight through the edge, to be honest, Mark. I don't think. I mean, certainly the UK profile of NetEx. I mean, it can't even do sort of dynamic pricing and things like that. So I think that moving fare zones around centroids are probably going to be, well, it's a step beyond the format as it is at the minute. I mean, I don't know if Tim, I mean, I know there's forum work going on around various additions to NetEx, but I don't think that concept.
Well, I'll be in contact, Mark, because that is a use case that I need explaining in more detail to me, so I can explain to the Europeans that are working on an update to NetEx fares at the moment quite what it is and how it would work, so that we might be able to get it in the next release.
Yep, that sounds good. It's on the drawing board at the moment, so I'm sure it's got a lot of hurdles to go through. But for our current fare structures, we do have the concept of distance-based fares, which are then capped. I've never really seen how NetEx has been implemented for that, but is that within the current scope as well, to be able to have distance-based fares with a capping?
It's not in the current scope. Well, I mean, it's in the current scope of the UK profile. It's not in the BODS profile, because it's quite light touch, even the UK profile, about how it's done. But obviously, there are no use cases in England, so it wasn't included. We can, of course, go back and look at that.
England standard.
Well, it is for BODS, and you know, it was designed for the use cases of BODS. Yeah, I think this is obviously a challenge when, you know, you're designing profiles that are specific to a publication platform, and we have separate publication platforms, and something that probably needs a bit more thought.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Well, there are benefits and challenges for an early adopter, and there are also benefits and challenges for the late adopter of a standard or technology, etc. But you know, I mean, for example, at the moment, everybody is talking about personalization and immediacy, and you know, having the service which is individual. But I think you know, this dynamic type of distance base might be requiring picking up some stops based on distance, and you know, this stops are within this distance, but as Stephen said, it has not been adopted, so maybe Wales would be the first, the starter, and will be the late adopter after that.
I mean, I have spoken to people about the distance-based fares, and when people say distance-based fares, they actually mean different things. You know, whether it's true distance or whether it's some approximate stops that they think are within distances, are two different things. Would obviously need modeling differently in NetEx. So I think, yeah, we need a clear idea of what people mean when they say distance fares, because people use that term sort of loosely.
Yeah, I think it's stop based, but I just put in the chat what the customer sees as the distance for their pricing.
So I mean that's simple enough for doing in NetEx, in the UK profile.
Yeah.
So we can look at a 1.3 release, or is it 1.2? I can't remember what version we're on now. I think it might be 1.2 actually. We can look at a 1.2 release that adds that if there's a need for it.
I'd suggest that we pick that up and talk to Mark separately about that and the capping and the personalised zones as well to make sure that they're handleable.
Yeah, I mean,
some more issues for the issues log. Excellent.
Well, I think that personalised zone issue might be there for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it will be. Given the update cycles and.
Yeah, but I think the distance base we could probably solve, you know, either by the next meeting or the following meeting easily enough. Okay, so just onto we have made some changes to CFDS. This is around the multi-operator fare issue. So multi-operator fares are really simple fares, but we still don't really have any data for that yet outside of the West Midlands. And the OPDI a couple of years ago put forward an arrangement that they would like to proceed with, which is that there is such a thing as a lead operator nominated for each kind of ticketing scheme, and that they would provide the data on behalf of all the other operators. There were various technical issues around that, obviously, because operators have different ticket machine suppliers, and those ticket machine suppliers hold data only specific to retailing tickets on those networks. So there wasn't comprehensive data to actually produce some of these multi-operator products. So it was suggested by the DFT, by OPDI to DFT, that the CFDS was expanded to allow operators to collaborate on building major multi-operator tickets. So in line with that approach, we've added a new feature to CFDS. And how that works is that an operator, the lead operator, as sort of suggested by the OPDI arrangement, is responsible for creating the products and the pricing and all of those kind of attributes. Once they've done all their parts of the product, they can then share it with the other participating operators, and they add their own data. What we're talking about there is their own data. We mean services and stops, because the only thing the supporting operator needs to provide is the access rights to their network that the product provides. All of the rest of that, the work around the product, is done by the lead operator. So yeah, it's a fully collaborative process. All you need is an account for the CFDS and the other operators that are participating to have an account for the CFDS, and you can pass the product between you, or lots of products between you, complete them, and then it goes back to the lead operator to export and then publish to bods. To support that, we've added various notifications to the service, as emails and internal notifications, so operators can communicate with each other without needing to email each other directly. And hopefully that should support an ongoing process of major ticketing companies and schemes being able to produce all the relevant data pertaining to a multi-operator product in one single XML file, which obviously makes it far easier to consume. And as an additional note, that there was already a multi-operator feature on there, one that was built with the user in mind. For that was one that would create the multi-operator product entirely on their own, so it has all the information pertaining to the products, all the exceptions, all the services that it doesn't count for. That's still retained, and it'll be repurposed slightly. This feature is a new feature to go alongside that, because the old feature was still being used by National Express West Midlands to produce NBus multi-operator products. So we've decided to retain that and add a separate feature. So yeah, hopefully, the next OPDI, we hope to be onboarding the major operators and getting some multi-operator products in a few nominated areas, probably places like Oxfordshire, things like that. And we will finally start to see multi-operator fares published to bods, well, outside the West Midlands, of course. So that's the update on CFDS.
Any questions for Stephen? No? Okay, thank you very much. So that means that we will then move on to NatTan and some of the things that Dr. J is working on, and
Brilliant.
team, I should say.
And team,
you are
yes.
not an individual. You are part of a team.
I am not the only one, but I represent the team. The team are currently working on a kickoff for rail replacement buses, which is why there's just me here. I was the one that could be most spared because I can't code, so therefore I offer very little. I've just put the mural link in the meeting, Teresa, so you can copy pasta this as you need. Very quickly, you can stay in touch with us. You'll know how to do that because half of you are in my meetings or on my newsletter. So the things I quickly need to discuss, if you've been at ODPI or CDI and anything else over the last couple of weeks, you've probably caught up with this. The first one is the non-passenger stops. So these are stops where passengers will not be departing or alighting the service permanently. we have reserved 999 ATCO code for this. These will be able to be created by bus operators, and therefore a very specific circumstance. And I will just jump on the service design to walk you through. Please go and have a look at these and come back to us with any additions. There's a couple of small tweaks that I need to make that I haven't had a chance because I was at interchange this week. So there are two types of non-passenger stops. There's bus depots, you'll know bus depots, and you want them in there so you can do that head time before the start of a service. So you can record a bus leaving, somebody can put it in, and when they arrive at the first stop, it's already showing in the real-time indicator. It's not, they don't become like surprise buses for people because they don't show until you've hit that first mark. So we wanted to put this in so it makes your schedules a lot better, makes your A-boarding a lot better. Because they're non-passenger stops, we needed to find a way to do it. This is what we've done. The other ones are driver's rests and driver bus changes. So where you're coming up, nobody hops on or off the bus other than the driver. You're just stopping somewhere to change over drivers. And the driver's rests are for coaches. They came up when we tried to bring across the CNDS. There were coach stops in the middle of the M6, for example, at a motorway services where your driver got to go and have a break because they've been driving for long enough. Passengers can hop off and go and also have a break and get on the coach, but you can't join the coach in that place. You can't change to another service or anything like that. So they're not strictly a passenger stop. So we needed to find ways of putting these in so that your services could go into BODs without breaking everything. So what we've come up with is 999 at the start, and then we are suggesting you put in the knock code. I realize it's silly saying knock code because the C is for code, but put in your knock code so that, and then you can do whatever numbering you like. That way it's going to avoid clashes between two bus operators putting in 999001, for example. It means that we should end up with unique-ish identifiers. It doesn't matter if the same place is called 3 or 4 different 999 codes because they're not being shown to anyone. They're simply there to allow your schedules to be as accurate as possible. So if you're doing any automatic vehicle locations against them, you know exactly where they are. Now, some 999 codes are also being used for international passenger stops. Please don't, because they're actual passenger stops. So if you're driving your coach, it's usually coaches. I don't think there's any buses that are international. Tim's going to tell me an exception, of course, but I'm sure there's not that many buses that are international. It's basically stops outside of NAPTAN's geography. They will have a NetX code or whatever the code is in that country. I think France uses various NetX codes. There's a whole pile of stops in Dover. Use the French stops in Dover. Don't create a Dover with 999 because that's not what we want. We want you to use the stop in France that's the right one, because then we can start to join up and show that you hop off at a bus stop in Dover, in Calais, rather than a bus stop called Calais that's stuck in Dover. Sorry, that was me getting my sides of the channel a bit confused there. You think I'm bad at geography? Yes. We all know that I am. Just a sec. I just need to move this out the way so I can get back to the update. So that's the 999 stops. Some people have already started using them, because I vaguely mentioned this back in October, November, and some people went off and were a little bit premature before we'd even finished building out the service and thinking about it. That's fine. We know that you can use them. One of the things that we're going to ensure is that BODs doesn't challenge you on these. If they're labelled 999, they're effectively official NAPTAN stops. So you don't need to have pretend stops in there and change them every couple of months or anything like that. So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2, this is more for your data consumers, But for anyone who's trying to make sense of NAPTAN data, we are starting to go through and look at every single field in NAPTAN for consistency, completeness, and accuracy, and looking at that across all 148 or so local transport authorities and ATCO area codes, that all of this is coming into NAPTAN and being published. We are then finding where things are broken. So we found the first three that we're going to say, don't use these fields. There is no rhyme or rationale behind them. You will go completely mad trying to make sense of them. The first one is modification. So you've got status, which is active or inactive for a stop. Active means you can use the stop. Inactive means don't use the stop. And there was also a modification, new, pending, revised, and a couple of others. What we uncovered is modification is just crazy. London were all set to new. If it had been updated 700 times, it was still set to status new. There were some people who were using revise all the time. There were some people who were using pending. It was just a righteous mess. So we've said, please don't use this, and we are looking to withdraw publishing that data. So even though we're going to have to get it from everybody, very much like the notes field with the PII information, we just suppress its publication. We'll look at suppressing the publication of these fields in the near future. The other one is revision number. You'd think, yeah, I make an update, the revision number increments by 1. Hasn't quite worked that way. Some software and software versions have allowed updates to some fields and not others without incrementing. Just don't even ask. Even the hand-done ones, some increment when they make the smallest change, some increment only when they make a significant change. That's just makes no sense. So we're saying don't use it and we will suppress it. The last one, you'll be pleased to know, clear down codes are finally gone. You haven't used them, well, probably for over 10 years or more. And some of you might have fond memories of clear down codes, but they're now going out of the data. There's no rhyme nor reason for using it, and we will suppress that data as well, which just cleans up NAPTAN, makes it a little bit more understandable, because you're not getting data that doesn't make complete sense, and we can't explain it. So the next things that we're doing, the upcoming work, rail replacement buses, which this group are probably also very interested in. We're just working on the technicals of exactly how we do this. But what we're doing is to meet the PSVAIR deadlines for rail replacement buses, we are putting in something into the schema called an RRB, rail replacement bus. In the first instance, we've had to do an audit of all the rail stations. So there will be only rail stations which are on national rail will be in the 910. Anything that's not on national rail that is working will be a 940, will be a metro station. But anything that is on the national rail website will be listed as a 910. This is going to just simplify some of the decision making, because it's differed every time somebody like me has come in. I've been the most consistent person on this, and that I've just gone, somebody please tell me what this is. This allows us, because we're going to do this using a feed from National Rail, this is going to be automated. So when National Rail make a stop live, we will find out about it via the feed that they give us, and we will create that railway station and a rail replacement bus stop automatically using Cody code, and it will come out the end into the 910 NAPTAN, which is what we're building. In the first instance, rail replacement buses, we're going to suggest that they have a radius of 250 metres. This means that if it's centred on the rail station and you're within a radius of 250 metres, you've probably arrived at a rail replacement bus stop. There's a few that are a little bit further than that, but that's going to get the bulk of them for the MVP. Then for the first run through of cleanup, we're going to take away the 20 or so that don't actually have roads near them. There's a couple in the fens, there's one on an island, there's one that's 1.5 miles from the road over fields and footpaths. There's one that's in the middle of nowhere up in Scotland. We're just going to take out their rail replacement records because ain't nobody running a rail replacement bus to them. And then we're going to start doing a cleanup, and we're going to figure out with the train operating companies and the bus operating companies and the people who run rail replacement buses, which ones we need to clean up first. Is it the multiple records? Is it the ones where the actual rail replacement is 500 metres from the station rather than 250 metres, so we just need to move it to the right place? Is it where it's sitting on a local bus stop? Some of the instructions as to where the rail replacements are really precise. Some of them are a little bit less precise. They say things like out the front of the station has four entrances. Which of these entrances is the front? And I know you all think that sounds easy and logical, but it's not. So we're just trying to figure that out. As an aside, Mike will talk about rail replacement, rail station entrances. We're going to move them away from local authorities and bring them into the 910 data, because we can get all of the information about all of the entrances to a rail station from National Rail, rather than just have one arbitrary entrance, which some people put down as the boundary between what the local authority controlled and what National Rail controlled or the train station was. And a lot of it for accessibility, they were missing the side entrances to platforms that are there that allow step-free access to some platforms, and we needed to put those in. So, right. Other bits that we're doing. I'll pause for breath if anyone wants to ask me a question, or I'll just barrel on. Throw your hands up because I'll spot the hands. I'll keep an eye out for hands. So, touching first on the feedback to local authorities. We have a meeting in the next couple of weeks. I know that I've got it. I can't find it in my meeting. I can't find it in my calendar at the moment, but I know that it's been booked. One of the reasons that we are looking at a pilot with Fix My Street or something similar is so that as NAPTAN, we can keep an eye on those requests to move NAPTAN stops or change their locations that are going to local authorities that aren't being acted on in timely manner, and NAPTAN is about 6 months. Let's be honest, a lot of local authorities can take up to that time because they only publish once a quarter. So it's just giving them that time to understand the request and make the data change. But we don't have any visibility of it. So that's why we wanted to put in a little doodad that allows people to send that off. This is going to take a little bit more time than we thought, because edge cases are being taken in rather than the simplest case. So we're just having to deal with that. In the meantime, if you've got requests, CC in naptan.nubtig, the centralized mailbox. I'll put it in the link in a moment, because that will allow us to keep a track of that and just check whether or not it gets done. If it doesn't get done, we can start talking with the local authority and help the bus operators ensure that that change is made, or understand why it's not being made. Because sometimes bus stops are not being moved back to where they used to be because where they used to be had a crash and the decision was made to move it to a different place, or they've had a planning permission fail and Tim Rivet has decided a close bus stop is as close as possible to my house but not outside my house. So therefore, and when the bus stop was outside my house, I made a complaint and it's now outside next door's house. This is some of the planning permissions fun. Sorry, Tim, to pick on you. But that is why sometimes bus stops are moving, because the planning permissions are not going through for where the bus stop is, and somebody's made it be moved 20 metres in another direction or 50 metres in another direction. So that's one thing. Plus Bus, there's a meeting between Julie and Catherine next week to agree on a way forward, because we've got 2 plus buses. Our one is broken. Mike's one is good, but you can't get NAPTAN in Mike's one. You can only get NAPTAN in the broken one. So how do we resolve this problem? It sounds very simple. Get rid of the unbroken one. Figure out how to publish the 2 of them together. That's what we're going to propose to Julie and Catherine, and but I'm not sure whether it's going to be done in this financial year or in the next spending review. So just keep your eyes out. But in the meantime, don't use the plus bus that is published by NAPTAN. It is not very good. And what was the other thing? So I did that. I did plus bus. I did feedback. Oh, field links. Yeah, it's in our quality. We did a public meeting talking about, I'll swing over here because I'm going to publish them probably today or tomorrow. We did some really good meetings on data quality and what we should be looking at. Now, field lengths has been set at 48 characters, but the only place that is really strictly enforced is in the creation of the CSV file. Everywhere else, you can actually get away with putting in a longer field. But there's this one thing which flows upwards into the incoming data. So one of the things that I will be suggesting in the next coming months is that we do away with this arbitrary number, because modern technologies can handle slightly longer, but I want to understand what the downstream problems would be if we allow, because we've got a couple of rail stations that need to go out to like 54. We've got a couple, but that includes the word station. So if we just go rail sta, we're going to be fine. But it's little things like that that are meaning we just want to find out what would the downstream impacts be if we make the decision to remove these length restrictions on some of these fields, especially the name field, I believe, is the main one. And then the last one, with the NAPTAN locations, we did some proof of concepts. Dan, I'll come to you in 2 seconds. We did some proof of concepts. We know that there are a number of trans-exchange stops that are in a different lat long to what is in NAPTAN. So what we will start doing is having a look at it, doing an exception report. And when I say an exception report, there's nearly, I think when we did a quick run, there was something like over 80,000 stops. So I'm not going to chase up 80,000 stops. I'm just going to have a report of going, these stops, trans-exchange is putting them in a place that's different to NAPTAN. Can I group them in any way and chase up and find out why this bus operator is moving the stop? Because these are the ones that I think Ava and everyone was talking about with BODs, where it's creating issues on ABODs and places like that because the stop's not in the right place. I want to understand what right place means and whether it's the right place as in NAPTAN or the right place as in what's been put in trans-exchange. Because if NAPTAN needs to win, and we look at how we move NAPTAN to the correct actual physical location place, because the right place is the actual physical location. Does that make sense? I'm seeing Teresa nodding, which I think is about the best I'll get. So, Dan, I think you're going to ask me a nice question.
Always nice questions. No, it's just about the field length. I think it'd be great to get the better accuracy of data. All I know is that we have an automated process that picks up the TSV and downloads it automatically. And I believe we may have hard-coded field lengths in there based on it. So lots of notice is always keen on these things because it will probably break our importer. Heads up is always good.
There will be lots of notice. We also want to move people away from using the CSV as much as possible into using, because we can now also provide JSON rather than XML, and JSON is comma separated, but it's better than the CSV. Don't give me that look. It's better than the CSV file, simply because the CSV file downgrades everything to 2.1. It doesn't have the richness of the 2.4 data. I literally have no idea what's going to happen when I put in RRBs, but I'm not going to fix the CSV file for 910. If I put in RRBs and they don't show, it's somebody else's problem. It's not my problem. I'm focusing on getting the XML and the JSON out. The CSV file is a remnant from a previous system, and we'll look at putting in something a little bit more robust and better at doing what you actually need there. Does that make, Dan? I know that's a heartbreak, but hey.
I guess
Learn.
I guess it's not too bad. I guess we read lots of JSON for lots of things. It's harder
Yeah.
for Joe blogs is to read because you can't really add a JSON into Excel or something like that. But I think that'd be fine as long as there's notice,
Yeah.
as long as we get access to the data and we've got a run into it, we can prepare for it. As long as it's not like actually at the end of the month we're stopping the CSV and we're going to JSON, then
No. Oh God, no! I wouldn't do that to you. I'm not insane.
Good.
The other thing is I also want a better. You're using CSVs to create reporting in a lot of places. I don't think downloading a CSV file and wrangling it in Excel is the right way to build a decent report. And you're missing out on some of the extra information that we can provide by linking data sets up. So I want us and BODs to sit down and have a look at what is goodly and for whom this goodliness is best delivered for.
Okay, cool.
Mike.
Hi, yeah, I was just coming on from what you were just saying. I was going to say, well, if you don't want us using the CSV, I'll be willing to hear what we should be using. What would be the recommendation that is accessible and easy to use for simple people like me, shall we say?
And that's the piece that I want to start. And this is in later, which is the pool of stuff that I'm slowly starting to identify the needs and research and understand the needs, is you're using a CSV file that was created to create a data set. So it's not built for reporting. It grabs some fields and not others. It doesn't pull across some pieces. I want to look at how we can make, like I said, for whom would this report be goodly? What are you trying to do with the CSV file? And is there a better way that we can make via the system so that you can get this? For example, Haraj, Hannah and I, we built a very, very quick Microsoft Business Intelligence reporting interface, and then uncovered that you can only use it inside DFT. So it didn't for whom it provided value was not really anyone who really needed it. So that's the sort of thing that I want to look at as to how we get something on the site where you can grab all of the data and create the reports that you need without all these extra random fields like short common name language as a field that nobody ever uses. And
I know what you mean. Yeah, I when I download the CSV, I have all the fields, obviously, all the columns, but like you say, you tend to like hide half of them or whatever.
And I also feel your pain because it's how I interact with most of the data. But what I'm starting to do is actually asking the team to run me reports from the system that pull the subsets of data that I actually need, because I realized I was missing some of the data if I only use the CSV file. For example, it doesn't bring up a whole pile of 72 suspended stops that are sitting in one of the local authorities, have never shown in a CSV file because the CSV didn't know to pick up the suspended stops. It's kind of one of those little edge cases are starting to catch us out because the number of stops in one system is different to the number of stops in another.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah. What I was going to ask was just it may be obvious to everyone else, but it wasn't to me. When you were talking, you were saying about the stops being in NapTan being different to those in TransExchange. So when you're talking about TransExchange, what TransExchange are you talking about? Are you talking about TransExchange in BODs?
We're taking for one of our systems, we use both BODs and TNDS TransExchange files.
Oh, it's TNDS TransExchange. That's where I was wondering which TransExchange or where this TransExchange comes from, who it belongs to, if you see what I mean.
So we can grab it from both systems. So one of the things of the report that I'm trying to, and it's all proof of concept at the moment, we've just done a couple of very, very quick, is this actually a number that's greater than 1? And how big is this number if we try it? Is how many stops are moved in their trans exchange on TNDS and on BODS, because I know that different people publish those as well. So I want to understand if TNDS is saying the stop is in this place and BODS is saying the stop is here, that's also a problem to flag up, even if, and where the stop is in NAPTAN is almost irrelevant, but because we're pulling all of this data to do managed removal and some of the other stuff that we do around A+ NAPTAN, we might as well make goodly things with it, because we're really understanding this data, and where it doesn't match NAPTAN, that's a problem.
Yeah,
and we can start to track down why it's not matching NAPTAN and why the two systems might not be matching as well, which is also a big problem.
That's great. Yeah, that answers it. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, currently in proof of concept, so please don't ask me for updates every couple of weeks. I'll let you know as we get further.
Mark.
Sorry, Teams refused to unmute. This is the perennial question on NAPTAN from Wales, which is multi-language support. I probably ask it every year, so it's my annual ask of that question.
I have a proposed solution. I think I will double check with Catherine, our SRO. It should be in the spend review. The alternative language would be a little add-on type thing, so that you could say the field and what alternative language it should be, or what the alternative language would be. I know currently Welsh gets put in with a slash sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't get put in. You can only set the field to be either English or Welsh. We are looking at a proper solution for this, but it is some re-engineering and some reworking of NAPTAN. I don't know, even as far as I can tell, NetX hasn't quite solved it, unless you go and just create multiple Welsh common name fields, etc., which I don't think is the solution. I think there's better ways of doing it, but I want to sit down and kind of work it through. And Mark, you're definitely somebody I would sit down and work it through with, just to make sure that we're thinking of the right thing. Because what to me seems very simple, sometimes is complicated data-wise. And sometimes what I think is very simple, everyone goes, oh, never thought of it that way. So
well, we think of it because it's a legal requirement, so we have to have something in place.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I want to get something in place for you. It's just the schema is not set up to handle multiple languages, so I need to figure out a way to handle multiple languages in a sustainable manner, other than you just put a slash and write the Welsh in, and then have plain text not being plain text, and suddenly you end up with weird ANSI numbers and characters everywhere, which breaks a lot of downstream systems.
I think we're using it at the moment. We're putting Welsh into NAPTAN as the alternative descriptor, and it has got a flag to say what language it represents. But it's a workaround, I suppose, at this point.
Yeah, still. But it only allows you to do one field. It doesn't allow you to do a lot of the different. Yeah, and this is the thing that we needed. We need to find a solution that works for more than just a field.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out, so that you've got something sustainable, because I know some things are translated and some things aren't. I believe High Street is never translated, but the location of the High Street is translated. So it'll be High Street. I'll just use Wales because it's the one Welsh word I know. High Street Wales and High Street Cymru are the same stop, with a slight, one's got the English, one's got the Welsh locality, but High Street is never translated. There's weird little pieces in there, as far as I understand. I've been trying to make sense of it and find a way to explain it to people. I'll have to come up with a Welsh traveller, a Welsh passenger, to join Beryl and Beverly and Brenda, trying to make a journey.
Bronwyn would be good.
Bronwyn. Thank you. I was trying to think of a name not knowing any Welsh, trying to think of a name that might be Welsh. So we'll have Bronwyn from Wales trying to make a journey, who's a Welsh speaker and wants to find the right place.
That'll be good. Thank you. And my other point, I'm just going to put in the chat, some of the work that we're doing on NAPTAN is trying to help operators, local authorities identify where NAPTAN is incorrect, because it's a common conversation about we've got a stop, it's got the right name, but now it's in the wrong place. So we're using some of the real-time data that we're receiving for the Welsh Bus Data Service and working with some suppliers to identify where we're seeing instances where the bus is stopping at a particular location, which is different to where NAPTAN is. So in the chat there, I've got an example. I was trying to find a nice rural place, but I couldn't find one. In that example, it's out by 60 meters, I think. Did I paste the 60-meter example? Which, as we saw with ABODs, it's kind of getting to that tolerance level, and it has an impact as well for next stop announcements, which generally are 30 meters, I think. So we're announcing stops in the wrong place potentially, if that's not correct.
And it will also have an impact when we do the A+ NAPTAN, the accessibility of NAPTAN of that stop, because we won't be looking in the right place for what's at the stop.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that I wanted to start asking people about how we do it, which is a bus stop is where the bus stops. If the bus stop is not stopping at the place where it is on NAPTAN, but it's stopping somewhere else, let's have a look at whether the NAPTAN record should be moved or whether the bus operator has just decided there's a better place down the road.
Generally, it's because over time it's been moved and the NAPTAN hasn't been updated.
And then it's a matter of finding the right local authority person and telling them, please update and please move the stop, which is what we want to be on top of with the feedback to local authorities, sorry. Yeah, so in Wales, we've bypassed local authorities. We're doing it ourselves as TFW. Ah, yes, and let's have a longer discussion about that, because I know that Tansy and team are working on this as well. Yeah, so Tansy and I are working on that together. Yep, which is cool.
Okay, anything else? No. Okay, in which case, thank you for bearing with us, Mike. Traveline.
Yeah, I'm going to have to be brief, Tim, so I've got to shoot off for an appointment at 4 o'clock. So the three kind of headlines from Traveline really are: the web services procurement is now complete in confidence to this meeting. We signed a contract with Passenger last week. We'll be doing some press and public announcements probably next week. It'll be or into the week after. So just a reminder, Passenger will be providing us with 3 websites. So that's the traveline.info website, Traveline Data and PlusBus websites. Within the traveline.info will be a new journey planner, and that will also feature on an app as well. So we're just working out the kind of coordination of the program for that. But the plan is we'll probably go live with the PlusBus site in the first instance. Reason for that I'll come to shortly. But the other websites and app we'll be looking to get launched the kind of back end of summer into the autumn, I would imagine. Within there, a number of improvements, as you'd expect. We're looking to get fares in there, we're looking to use the board's disruption feed, and another lot of kind of user enhancements as well. So I should have a bit more information on that and a kind of clear plan at the next meeting when we should be well into development on that. In the data space, we've just commissioned a piece of work to bring across all the PTI elements into TNDS. So that's things such as track data, because we're looking to make use of that in the new journey planner. We'll also be making that available in the TNDS output. So that kind of makes us in readiness for taking, any future ingestion of BODS data. We'll be bringing everything across and outputting everything as well, where the PTI elements are present. So that's a piece of work we're just about to kick off with base map, and that should get delivered in the next couple of months. The other big area to announce is the PlusBus e-ticket. We've had mentioned at the last meeting, we've had trials in Cambridge, Weston-super-Mare and 7 schemes in West Yorkshire. To date, we've had no issues reported in those areas, and we've had some kind of quite promising feedback. So the plan is to proceed to a national rollout at the back end of March, so within the next few weeks, or early April. When we say kind of national rollout, that means we'll be enabling the product in RDG's retail systems. Then it's a case of retailers and TOCs to come on board and start retailing the ticket. During the trial, C-Trip, who are responsible for Trip.com, they're the kind of major player that we've got in place now. So they're actually retailing e-tickets in the trial zones and are ready the minute that we switch to the national rollout. They'll be able to offer that ticket for screens across the country. So major step forward in terms of the integrated travel agenda and the national rail ticketing strategy. In that, like I say, I've tested it myself, so it's working, that you can go on there for appropriate journeys. You can select an e-ticket and then add that onto your travel. We've also been working with Ticketer in that space, where Ticketer are now able to validate tickets. So at the point of scanning, we do have an issue that we need to overcome around the kind of clash with NFC when users are scanning the tickets, which is addressed by entering suppression code into the app that's retailing the ticket, and also allowing the user to transfer their ticket to their Apple or Google Wallet also suppresses the NFC. So that's something we're working on the retailer side with. So we've had some positive conversations with Trip.com to do that, and we're hoping that others will follow suit as well. So all exciting. Like I say, should be in a position, hopefully, all being well, with national rollout end this month, that within in the build up to Easter, we should hopefully be able to do some kind of more major press around that one as well. So like I say, a lot going on, and a lot of things kind of coming to fruition at the same time.
Very exciting, particularly the new websites and the inclusion of tracks data.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Yeah.
Enables you to do a lot. So excellent. Any questions for Mike? No.
Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Bus priority is a format and a standard that's been around for a good many years. It's remained pretty static. So this is the way that you get a bus to request a green light at a traffic signal as it approaches. That standard, as I say, has been in place for a long time. There are two bits of work going on related to it, which attendees might be interested in. One is an update to the current approach of doing it to make it fit for current purpose, because the world has moved on slightly. For example, traffic signals don't just use numbers as references anymore. They use alphanumerics, and the standard doesn't support that. So adding that sort of thing in, and then a longer view of actually how do you provide bus priority in future, looking at the way that data sources have changed over the last 20 years since we last really looked at how to provide bus priority. So there's a group looking at how bus priority should be provided in future, based on where we are now and where the industry thinks it might go. So that's not just bus industry, that's also the traffic management industry. If you want to be involved in either of those working groups, let me know, because the more the merrier on them, particularly the how we do it in future, because that one really is a blank sheet of paper at the moment. EU standards development, we're in a bit of a quiet phase with most of the standards. There have been, over the last couple of years, a load of updates which you've all been party to through this group as they've come out. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background with updates being developed to meet largely European regulations and things like that. So things like the multimodal traveller information service and the ITS directive, the new one. There's a load of development work in progress to meet the requirements of those, but they're all at the very early stages. So there's nothing really to share on that at the moment because it's trawling through the legislation and working out what might need to change to meet and support the regulations and the legislation. So at a later date, once that work has started to crystallise into definite changes, then of course we'll go through those. Yeah, so a bit quiet at the moment on the European front from an update, but these things do go through in cycles. Is there any questions about that European standards? No. Okay. Issues log. We started off this meeting with nothing new on it. I think we now have 3. I think we have block number. And if we put together a group to look at the issues with providing it and maintaining it, importantly, then that's probably a very useful thing to do. If you want to be part of that group, let Teresa or myself know, and we will put out a doodle for a couple of weeks' time for a first get together on blocks to look at some recommendations and thoughts on that. We also have an issue with distance fares for the current profile to support that, and also personal travel zones, which will need to flow up to a European update to NetX, I think, because I don't think it's supported, but we'll check. So yeah, 3, which is good. Okay, our next meeting is the 5th of June. Has anybody got any other business? Anything that you want to raise or discuss that we've not talked about? No. Okay. In which case, thank you all very much, and we will see you on the 5th of June.
One clarification on the agenda, which is that at the bottom, the next meeting, 5th of June, fine, but the one after that should be the 18th of September.
Thank you, Mr. Quality Control person. Well spotted, Nick. There's a real risk that it just gets copied and pasted into next time, so I'll create the September agenda now. Okay, if there's nothing else, no other errors spotted, then thank you all and have a good rest of the day. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye everyone. Bye. Bye.